I wanted to, take a minute and talk about what this is about. Obviously, the Panama Conway Basin, which I assume that everybody that's here tonight is a part of that. And Bill Rue, I think, is going to give us some statistics on it. But, it's a basin that's about the same size of the basin that's protected by the Marvin Bro pump system. So, what we're hoping tonight is to gather information about the work that's been done to date, the work that's going to be done in the future, and to provide you guys with an opportunity to give us your comments. Because of the size of the meeting and the time that's available, we have some comment cards. You fill out those cards with questions. Someone will collect those. The questions will be answered in kind of like groups tonight, but I promise those will be posted on the Facebook on the Facebook page that we have, and answers provided. So just go through a little safety on this and give you an idea. The exit door, of course, is right here. If there's an emergency, there are bathrooms as you came in, men and women's. There's some water that's available if you guys would like bottled water over towards the kitchen. I wanted to take a minute and recognize the elected officials that we have here tonight. I didn't apologize. I introduced myself. I'm Bill Dawson, Ascension Parish Council District Number 2, which big part of this basin is here. John Cagnalotti is here tonight, and he has a part of his district is also in the basin. Travis Turner, he may come tonight. He was supposed to come, but he may not be able to, but he has a large part of his district in Darrell and Hillryville area that's a part of the basin also. We have Mr. Johnny Berthelot, who is a state representative that has a big part of this area in his district. And did Mike come back? Yeah, Mike Lambert, the mayor of Sorrento, and I wanted to give Mike a minute. This is his building. We appreciate his hospitality. They can recognize his council people that are here tonight.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like to recognize Councilman Don Schexnayder, sitting to the rear. Councilman Randy Annie is here. Our new councilman, councilperson, sorry, Randy Sutton. And I don't see Wanda or Patty. I know they said they were trying to be here. Welcome. We hope that we can come to some resolution and try to improve our drainage in our area. And I'll go ahead and turn it to Bill.
Thank you. I had a couple other people I wanted to thank. I promise this won't be too long, but Troy Schexnayder, if you got here early, you saw the pictures. He took us on a tour yesterday from Sorrento down to Blind River, so I appreciate that. And I also wanted to thank Charlotte Johnson. Charlotte, badgered me enough to have the meeting, but she reminded me a lot of times about the need for this, and I do appreciate that. I want to start off with what I think is the goal for for us that live in the basin, which is to provide a comprehensive solution to protect us during a 100-year event. So, plain and simple, it's the solution should cover the whole basin. The solution should provide coverage to everyone that lives in the basin based on a 100-year event. While doing the recognition, I have Ken Dawson, who's the CAO of Ascension Parish, is here tonight, and I appreciate him coming. Kenny Matassel was sent his regrets. He's at a NACO convention in Ohio. And we'll start tonight with Bill Rue. He's a drainage director, and he'll give you a little bit of an overview of the size and statistics on the basin, and then we'll go through some presentations by the engineering companies and Pontchartrain Levee District. Bill. So are you gonna come up here because you need to talk in a microphone? Right here.
Okay, this is what we call a LiDAR map, and basically it's different colors representing different elevations in the parish. The darker green represents the lowest elevations, and as you go up to yellow and brown, that's the highest elevation. So you can see.
Hold that mic, 'cause
Okay,
we're gonna try to
I'm sorry.
broadcast.
You can see exactly what happened. This is Sorrento and Gonzales. When one of the engineering firms, HNTB, gets up here, they'll actually have the basin defined with a line. But basically, if you follow the cursor, it comes all the way through here along 30 and takes in just about everything south of 30 in Gonzales, all along the river, all the way up into Geismar and into Darrell area. So it's a huge drainage basin. I'll give you a for instance, and Bill mentioned it a minute ago, that in square miles is almost equivalent to the Marvin Bro Pump Station basin. And if you know anything about Marvin Bro Pump Station, we have a levee system, and we also have 6 pumps, and we're getting ready to turn on number 7 pump. It's just about complete. Each pump gives out about 1,000 cubic feet per second. Okay, that's equivalent to millions of gallons, many millions of gallons per minute. And that is what is necessary to drain or to keep the basin, what we call Marvin Bro Pump Station basin, drained, protected. So if you think about it, you've got basically almost the same size area. So when you're thinking about a pump system or you know what is necessary if you're going to artificially take the water out, you're looking at almost building a same size pump station here to get this water out. Right now, this is we have 2 ports to the parish: the Henderson Bayou, or the northern section of the parish, the Galvez Lake area that's gravity drained, which means no pump system except we have a floodgate, but it doesn't act as a pump station. It's basically gravity drained in that district. The other is your district. The Conway Panama Drainage Basin is a gravity drained system. So basically it's dependent on how big, what kind of capacity you have in your drainage structures, which is your ditches. The bigger the ditches, the more water it can carry. The cleaner the ditches, the more efficient it can carry the water out. Plain and simple. You've got to have a way for it to get out because it's all nature. When water falls, once the water starts falling, totally up to nature how fast it gets out and what happens. And that nature includes, you know, where the wind's coming from, how much rain, where the rain's actually falling. A lot of things happens when you get to the event. So nobody can come up here and say, well, you know, if everything's not happening now the way it happened 10, 15 years ago, and it's not. It's impossible for you to have the exact same rainfall that you had 15 years ago, and you say, well, I didn't have a problem 15 years ago, but I got a problem now. You absolutely do. And you have a lot of reasons for that. One is developments. You're taking up your storage areas. The other reason is actually a natural subsidence of the land, all in South Louisiana. Over the last 50 years, I believe it's been estimated, South Louisiana lost as much as a foot. Okay? So you have subsidence, land sinking, you have a lot of infrastructure being built, not only the problem with subdivisions and commercial developments, but roads. And of course, one of the biggest factors that y'all have in Sorrento for its drainage is the railroad track and I-10 and US 61. Those are major impediments for gravity drainage, major impediments that we have to work around because we cannot get any help from, especially the railroad. They're like a third nation. They got their own constitution, I think. Nobody has control over the railroad. And we're going to get into a little bit more of this when HNTB and a couple other engineering firms gets up here and talks a little bit more about it. But basically, I want to show you how the elevations of the parish is structured. Also, if you notice here, everything drains away from the Mississippi River. Everything. So you have everything coming down to the southern part, which is coming down to Sorrento, for the most part in this basin. It's coming this way, one way or the other, with the exception of a couple places up here, which we'll talk about in a minute. So everything drains away from here. Now, let's get through with this one concept that a lot of people pushed out for many years. Let's dig a big hole and pump it to the Mississippi River. To do that, of course, you notice that, you know, everything's so high along Mississippi River. To get it there is a problem, number one. The second thing is you're going uphill. So the only way you can do it is dig you a giant hole right here to drain it to, and then you try to pump it out of that hole into the Mississippi River. It's not feasible. It just won't work. In fact, in the northern part of the parish, about 15 years ago, we looked at doing something like that with Bayou Manchac because of all the problems. Went through the whole process of feasibility study, looking at the engineering. It just would not happen. Just cannot happen. Okay. So what we have, and again, what we're concerned about more than anything else is in this area down here, which is your the Sorrento area, and things south of Gonzales. If you notice, this is right south of Gonzales. We have Boyle Bayou that comes down and connects into Conway Bayou, just about right up in here. In fact, right here. That is a major problem. But look at, if you notice, and again, that's a part of the LIDAR that's beneficial. You can see why. It's a hole right here. Okay, it's low right here. It's got some ridges through here. But again, water comes out of Conway Bayou, which is Conway right through here, going all around. Boyle Bayou comes through here. And what happens, Conway Bayou overflows, and the main problem with it overflowing is Hodgson Road. And mostly at the connection of Hodgson Road with Clouart Road, which is right around here. But what happens again, and it's a natural state. This is what it's meant to do. It's done it for hundreds of years. It's going to continue to do it unless we intercept it and send it somewhere else. It's made to overflow and get into these low pockets through here. The only way that can get out of there is through what we call the Clouart ditch, which goes on to 940 right here, 941, Brittany Tower Road. It goes across here, then it goes down the Brittany Tower, it goes across Brittany Tower Road, it goes all the way to the railroad tracks, then it has to go along the railroad tracks and get across railroad tracks, US 61, and get into this spaghetti-like configuration right here into Bayou Francois. This, and they got three other laterals right here that goes, two of them go to the same location. This is trying to go, and that's all along Brittany Street, which is a problem area. Brittany Street, for the same reason Hodgson Road is a problem area, because the overflow from Conway wants to go that way. And again, if you look at the colors, you'll see why. This is how nature set it up. Go that way, get out, and that is made to try to go to Bayou Francois. Bayou Francois is in our pumping system, the Marvin Bro pump system. So you have these laterals. When it overflows, it tries to go that way. Under normal circumstances, when Bayou Conway is low, it actually helps drain into Bayou Conway. Again, the problem is when elevation gets high in Conway, it overflows, and then it gets all of this area through here trying to get to Bayou Francois. What we're going to do, and again, we're going to go through different projects that we've got going on. One of the things is we want to try to help it get to where it wants to go. Okay? The worst thing in the world with drainage is to try to, you come in there and say, look, I think I'm smarter than nature, and I'm going to send it somewhere I don't want to go. It's kind of stupid. So what we're going to try to do, been trying to do, is send it where it wants to go, but get it there faster. Get more of it there faster. So one of our projects we've been working on, we got most of the engineering done for us, the size of the ditch. What we want to do is improve this channel, the Clouart ditch, actually doubling the size of the Clouart ditch, all the way through, opening this up and under the bridge. The train trestle right here is pretty good. It's actually big enough to take the flow. The airline highway needs some improvements. The problem we have, and we're working on permits right now, is right here. You have a pipeline that goes right through here. This ditch, if you notice it, it actually goes north. The water in Francois goes south or southeast. You get a heavy rain and pumping operation, you got a pretty high rate of flow, probably 2, maybe more, 2 feet per second, coming down this bayou. Totally impossible for that water to get in there. In fact, in a lot of instances, it actually comes the other way. What happens then is all of this area just fills up. There's a berm that goes along the Bayou Francois caused when we dredged it out. There's some cuts in it, but you don't have a good flow getting to it. It's impossible to get to it. What we want to do, in fact, what we are going to do, is actually establish a floodway from this point here, where it goes on the airline, to Bayou Francois going this way. And I say it's a floodway because of the pipeline. We can't get in there. I wish we didn't have the pipeline. We would have had a ditch dug years ago. Problem is the pipeline is pretty high. We cannot go any more than maybe 4 or 5 foot deep. 4 foot probably max. So that is our starting point. We can't go any more than that. The ditch is on the back side of it. So what we figured on doing, or will be doing, is establishing a 50 to 80 foot wide, 4 foot deep floodway all the way to Bayou Francois, and put control structure on Bayou Francois, just in case we need to close it off and prevent any kind of water coming back for whatever reason. We always want control on our structures. So again, a low, clean floodway going this way for when they get a high level coming that way, coming to that point, sheet flow, go across the floodway and get to Bayou Francois. One reason we never did try to get to the point of actually proceeding with this project is because of our pump station. But now that we had 5 pumps up until 2007, I think, and then we saw where we started having problems with the pumping station. We were getting too much water down there too fast, and we started losing ground even on moderate rainfalls. The elevation, we have all 5 pumps on, the elevation's still rising. It scared the hell out of us, to be honest with you. So we determined then to go forward with the putting in of one more additional pump and actually 2 bays, an additional bay just in case we wanted number 7 pump at a later date. Good thing we did. We put number 7 in. The council actually decided to say, look, we got it there. We know we're going to need it one day. Let's go ahead and do it. And we had the permit. It's already in place, good for 5 years. So we said, let's do it. Let's do it now. So they made that action over a year ago, a couple of years ago. We finally went to construction last year. And again, it's just about complete. Bert Klein, Peter Engineers, we discussed a little bit of that in a couple of minutes. But with that extra capacity, pumping capacity, we feel confident now that we can open this up and open up the drainage, Kluwat ditch especially, but also these 3 laterals here that cause a lot of problems in Brittany Street, and the city of Sorrento, if the water gets high enough where it can't get under the train trestle, or once it gets under the train trestle, it don't have no place to go, but it backs up. It goes along the railroad track, along the backside of between Brittany Street and the railroad track, and it floods to home, because the next place it got to go is to try to get to this lateral right here. Okay, so it's trying to get through here. It can't. It's going to keep coming down, trying to get to this. If this is full, then it comes down to here, but now it's into Sorrento. Okay, so what we want to do is intercept it and make it easy for that water to get to Francois, and use our pumping system to take it out. Try to relieve as much as we can that way. Okay. The other thing that we're planning, and this is fairly new, I haven't even talked to the council members about it. What we plan on doing, or will be trying to do, is actually enlarge. This is the Sorrento Reservoir, and I hate to say it, it's not a pumping system per se. It's a reservoir that we try to keep the low levels in. We pump it down as much as possible for an event, and actually we do that with all our systems, especially at Marvinboro Pump Station. We shut the gates at a certain time and give it enough time so we can actually close everything off, pump everything down as low as we can to give enough capacity, enough freeboard in that system for the rain or fog can fill up, and then it's going out, and we pump it out as it gets down to the pump station. So what we want to do here is actually enlarge the reservoir. Basically, the reservoir is right through here. This is the pump station right here. The reservoir actually through here and all the way around, there's a berm that they used, a barrel canal that they used to build the levee with. They left open. So the water collects all around it from the A, B, C, and ditches coming in here, crossing through the Highway 22, and most of it coming across the John LeBlanc. But it's coming across 22 and Main Street and entering into this system here. What we want to do is expand this system to hold a lot more. What we want to do is be able to take the water out, take this system down to a lower elevation before an event, and be able to control it by adding extra pumping capacity at the pump station. So another thing what we want to do is improve this pump station. We've got some old pumps there. They've been taking care of the situation up to this point somewhat, but we want to go ahead now and improve this pump station, improve the capacity that's within here, and add more pumping capacity so we can take it out a lot faster. One of the reasons we're doing it, and we started already across Main Street, what we want to do, we need and have to enlarge our drainage channels, A, B, and C ditch mainly, all the way through Sorrento, and all the way, some of it crossing Brittany Street, and coming up here, improve this, so we actually can take some of this overload, take it through your ditches to the drainage, the reservoir, and have enough capacity in the reservoir where it's not affecting anybody in Sorrento. You can have enough capacity to take it, hold it, and we have enough pumping capacity to get it out, get it into Conway, and keep that elevation low enough where it'll keep draining to that point right there. So basically, that is a couple of things that we're looking at immediately to try to solve, at least lessen the severity of some of the water problems y'all been having. Now, I know that the city, just like everybody else, strapped for money. A lot of your problem, be honestly, and it's not only you, it's in our subdivisions, the older subdivisions that we have throughout the parish, and especially in the municipalities, and that is your roadside drainage ditches. Your roadside drainage ditches throughout Ascension Parish in the older places are horrible. Everything is not adequate. Your ditches are not adequate. Your culverts are not adequate. None of it's adequate to get that water to our major drainage channels or major ditches to get it out. That is something the Drainage Board is reluctant to get involved with too much because by law, we're responsible for the major drainage, which is everything away from the road. Your outfall ditches away from the road. What your roadside ditch is supposed to be going through to get it away. We're supposed to be taking care of all of that. The cities, municipalities, and the parish is responsible to take care of their roadside ditches with their funds. But having said that, y'all don't have enough money to do that. And where that's going to come from is something that the parish and the municipalities are going to have to work on and see where those funds can come from. What we're doing within the parish, and again, this is not drainage funds. Again, if everybody don't understand, we have two entities that handles most of the infrastructure in Ascension Parish. And that Ascension Parish, the parish government handles roads and roadside ditches with a fund from the general fund and a certain other mechanism for pulling tax money in. But the Drainage Board handles the off-road drainage, major drainage, through a special tax that all municipalities and parishes and the parish residents pay. And that is the East Ascension Gravity Drainage District. Right now, we have both a millage and a half-cent sales tax. Millage is about 5 mils. Drainage tax is a half cent. And together, right now, they're bringing in approximately $18 million, okay? That pays mostly for operations of East Ascension Drainage District, which is a big operation when you figure in all our pump stations and all the drainage channels. I'll give you this is something that a lot of people, it's kind of hard for them to understand. If you take all of our drainage districts that East Ascension Drainage District is responsible for, channels, ditches, everything. You line them up, one against the other. You're going from here to Maine. So it's almost like saying, hey, look, we got 80, 90 people that operates a piece of equipment. We got a lot of support people, but actually you can't do anything unless a man's digging dirt. That man sitting on that piece of equipment is digging dirt. If you don't have somebody, a piece of equipment, a man sitting there, the rest of the support people is useless. And right now we have 80 to 85 operators that's able to work on this equipment. And so you say, well, we've got that many people to have a ditch or maintain a ditch from here to Maine. So now you get the complexity and you get the example of how much work we have to do. Not that we're complaining, we're working every day trying to do it. Council gave me permission to add more people, add more equipment, do what's necessary within our budget to increase the productivity of the parish. And we're trying everything we can to do it. But I just give you an example of what is happening not only in your area but in Ascension Parish. The other thing is Conway Bayou and Panama Canal. And for everybody that don't know, Panama Canal is a man-made channel. Everything drains here. Panama Canal intercepts that water because everything here is trying to go to Conway. That's a natural flow for everything coming from the river. It goes to Bayou Conway and through different other little ditches going through here. But basically that's where we want to go. Panama Canal was man-made through, I think, for farmers more than anything else many, many years ago. They intercept that water, give better drainage for farms and fields through here. So what happens is right now, most of the water drains to Panama. Panama intercepts it all the way from Darrow. You got tributaries going all the way up to Darrow, and which is all the way up through here, all the way up to here. So it comes down here, and this is Conway, actually keeps going all the way around. Panama connects into it right here and comes this way. Now, like anything else, drainage is a lot smarter than most humans. When it gets here, they say it can take least resistance. And what happens is a lot of this area, I would say 80% of this area from just north of the airport or west of the airport here, the airport's right there. Just west of that, all the way to Darrow, which is the Astral Land and some of the areas through here. It comes down and then it hits Panama and says, I'm going down Panama. It's straight, a lot easier. So it takes down Panama and comes on down. Now, what happens is they got cuts in Panama on both sides. And when it gets high, because the obstructions downstream, it overflows and it backs up into Astral Land, into Pelican Point, and actually backs up through some man-made channels that goes into Donaldson toward Loosemore Road, and everything's trying to go that way. So a lot of this area floods, especially Pelican Point and Astral Land, when you get a high elevation, mainly because, like I say, it can't go down, or it don't want to go down Conway. It tries to go down here, and then further down, we got obstruction with bridges and other things all the way down, and it starts backing up. And the other thing is that Panama is not big enough. Okay, the bigger it is, the more capacity it can hold. And what's happened, you're getting so much development through here, that water used to sit for a little bit, for lack of a better term, rest, take its time getting to the channel. It doesn't do that anymore because it's all hard surface. So now it's making a beeline into the channel as fast as possible. More water, getting to the channel a lot faster. So it's overpowering the channel. The channel had plenty of capacity 20 years ago. Because of all the hard surface and development, it don't have it anymore because too much water is getting there too fast, overpowering the capacity of that. We have a project which one of our engineering firms will be talking about in a minute. We did a full model of this whole basin to determine what needs to be done and the cost of it. So one of the things that we're going with right now is which is going for engineering, is the dredging of Panama Canal from the, let's see, I'll break it up, from the airport, which is basically right here, down the side of Pelican Point, all the way to LA 70, which comes all the way down and LA 70 right here, which right past that is the high ground of BFI, the dump right here. So we have GSA is through the help of PLD, funding from PLD, Punch-Run Levee District, we'll be engineering this this cut or this improvement of Panama through here. The model show that we had run by HNTB showed that that's the best bang for our buck. What happens past here, which you can see, this is, well, let me go back to it. The people that lives around here that ever passed 44 and Panama Canal look down, it looks like a tunnel. And if you ever go down one of the little roads going through here, I forgot the name of it. Anyway, you go alongside of it, and it's almost like it's an old berm from when they dug it out. They just piled the dirt along the side. So what you're having in Panama Canal is almost a channel, a vertical wall channel, because it goes straight down. Because what they did is piled all the dirt up on both sides and made a levee on both sides, which you think is good to keep the water out. But what happens is you get erosion in the bottom. Now you got a vertical a box that the water has to go through. Trees and everything else is on top of it. And what we need is actually the best way of getting water through a channel is a trapezoid type of funnel, which is inclined sides, flat bottom, inclined sides. You get the most capacity at the top, okay? And that's where you want it at, because that's your most flow. Your flow changes as you go around the edges. So you want to widen that top, get that center open so you get the best flow through the top. And the only way we can do it is to widen the top of this channel, Panama Canal, open the top up. Now, the trouble with doing that is permitting, and a lot of times because of natural canopy, wildlife and fisheries, and other EPA, DEQ always objects to us taking a lot of tree lines out of the, what they call the canopy, natural canopy along the bank line out because of wildlife. So what we're going to be doing is probably working from one side only. Lower it, improve it as much as we can from one side, get it as wide as possible. And we can be probably switching back and forth, depends on what the side is best to work on. And a lot of that is dependent on permitting. But we intend on improving this Panama from that location all the way to here. And that should, the model shows it should have a decent lowering of elevation from the high water elevations outside the channel. In other words, at the worst case scenario, the elevation that your house, if you live on the side of it, would be lower after this than before. So that's the best, again, the best bang for our buck. We are doing that, and we will be also putting in for a snagging and clearing. We did a snagging and clearing of both channels about 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like this. We're going to go back, after we do this, we're going to go back and do another snagging and clearing of of Conway Bayou, and remove obstructions all the way down. And the other thing I was about to say, if you notice while we're stopping right here, once you get past that, because you got that vertical top, you've got the levee on both sides that's containing it, it can't get out. It's got that one channel to go through, you can't get release from it. Once we get down here, you can see it opens up. There's nothing but a huge floodplain right there. We want it to overtop. Let it overtop, okay? Once it gets there, then the channel is really a minor issue with what's happening, because it gets into the floodplain. And let it overtop, it spreads out wherever it wants to go, and that's a benefit for everybody. It gets it out, it gets it away from us. What's that? It's that, right, but and again, you're right, on 2-year road, the biggest part of problem on 2-year road that we found, of course, you live there, the people that live there, and which we'll talk about in a minute, is surges. What is it? Gustav was a major problem because Gustav backs up, and Gustav really caused a major problem because it backed up toward 2-year road and backed up into Sorrento and into Brittany Street. Isaac was the bad one. Isaac backed up, elevations rose, It wasn't a significant event for anything except that surge. And that surge almost got into our pumping station and Marvin broke, the discharge chambers of the pumping station. So it's one of those things that you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you open everything up and make it as easy as possible for that water to get out and get through here, it's fine, unless you get a surge. The surge coming back this way, you're doing just the opposite. You enable that surge water to get back to you a lot faster. So again, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. However, as it stands right now, we have more of a problem with what we call head water getting out than surge water coming in. And there's certain other things that we're looking at as far as trying to help on that, which is Bert Kleinpeter will be talking about it in PLD is sponsoring and paying for a study between for control structures and pumps between us and actually Sorrento and St. James. So that would be more of a surge protection issue and protection than anything else. But BKI will talk about that in a few minutes. But again, when you talk about in-channel flow, again, we get to this point here. Major problem, because if you try to keep everything in the channel, it gets to this point here, it's going to leave the channel for the most part anyway. You had to go under the railroad tracks, go along the railroad track between US 61 and railroad track, go under the US 61, hit this channel, and goes on to Blind River. So what we're also looking at is trying to enlarge these structures here and here, under the airline, under the railroad, to try to open that up a little bit more. We're trying to work with the railroad people on that. Been trying to work with them for a number of years. Okay, yeah. The model showed for as it stands right now, we're going in phases. The first thing is the best bang for the buck. You get more benefit for what you have to spend by doing this section of Panama first. So we're going to do that in conjunction with another snagging and clearing and silt removal in Conway, which is if you got some obstruction and stuff through there. In addition to Panama opening up some of the crossings, and we're also going to be trying to open up some of the structures in Conway itself too. Try to open it up, and then the next phase, we have to test it, we have to see how it works, and then we'll go into if we have to, and it depends on funding. Again, all of this is dependent on funding. So after we do this, because that's the quickest and easiest, then we'll test everything out and see what happens, and then we'll go further step by step. The other thing you got to remember too is that in Conway, in conjunction with this, we opening up this these areas right through here to allow the overflow. What causes most of the problem on Brittany and Kluwat is the overflow from Boyle Bayou and Conway this away. Well, we want to open up all of this, which is your Kluwat ditch and these laterals going under the railroad tracks and over into our pump station, open that up and get that flow going that way. So again, if we do that, we're allowed to get that water out, and hopefully it'll benefit it enough where downstream of that you're not having as much of a problem. We get that done. And that needs to be done anyway. So again, we do all of this work up here. We do the dredging of Panama, opening up, try to open up this bottleneck at the railroad track in US 61. All of that together is something that we think it will do a good, have a vast benefit to the people in the lower part of, in fact, all of the Conway Panama Basin. I mean, it has to do a benefit.
Where's the time frame on this?
Okay, this is what's, I'll tell you what, let me show you something else right now, which is happening. No, we'll get them, it's just the time frame in getting them. They put you through everything possible, you know, but we have never really failed on getting a permit. Let me just bring this up, I'll show somebody. Okay, I know, but just I need to show this. Yeah. If I can open this up. Here we go. Okay, this, everybody heard about, I think everybody heard by this time that Ascension Parish, the other parishes are getting what they call mitigation money from the August, both of March of last year flood and rain event and the major flood of August. This is what we're going for as part of our portion of that, somewhat around $42 to $43 million. Exactly $33 million, we're going to have to put up additional 25% and makes it about a total funding of about 42 million. One of the things that we have to do, Marvinboro Pump Station, and this is the benefit to everybody, okay? It's everybody in the southern part of, and central part of Ascension Parish. Is to upgrade the levee system, the existing levee system, Marvinboro Pump Station, to a 100-year, which is actually is a 100-year plus 2-foot elevation. No, we're raising everything up. Right now, the actual parts of the levee system is really bad. I'm looking at it failing at any time with a major surge or flood event, a surge coming in from the Gulf. Because we have a lot of parts of the levee that was built back in the 80s and 90s, really to very little core standards. You have some parts of it that just where they dug a berm, the canal, and used the dirt and piled it up and smoothed it over and called it a levee. It's really substandard and is not nearly high enough. Right now, GSA is getting ready. We're getting ready to start building the Law Ridge Levee extension. Okay, but we need to go back, and the extension is at this level. We need to match everything up to it because it's kind of stupid. You got a portion of your levee that's high enough, the rest of it's not. What good is it? So what we're asking for is to be able to go in and do an upgrade of that levee. All of it don't need to, but a significant portion of it does need an upgrade, higher water toe. How that benefits you and the rest of Ascension Parish. Once we get the extension in, which goes almost up to Port Benson, and we can do this, the biggest portion of the flood from the August event, if we have an identical event, if this is done, most of you people won't flood. It'll stop it, go around, and go south, and whatever. If we can do this, the biggest portion, we have a significant benefit from if you get the same event. All that water won't overtop the levee, because that's what happened. It overtopped the levee, the old Law Ridge levee, came around, then it could get out. Came around, followed the levee around. The only place they get out is Airline Highway between you and AC. And that's where it came across. And it came right to Sorrento, flooded all Sorrento, trying to get back. It wanted to go to Lake Marpaw, kept trying to get there, never could, came and flooded y'all. So again, if we can block it off on the other end, it won't come through the parish and it won't flood you. So that's what we're doing here. The other part is actually what we've just been talking about is the Panama Canal Conway Bayou Basin improvements, including the pump station capacity improvements and everything else at the reservoir. And the third thing is work on the Bayou Manchac in the northern part of the parish. So we try to spread it around as much as possible. We're putting this in. We had a talk with GOSEP today, and we have documents to fill. We had a lot of work to do to get the applications in. But this is our money. Now, this is going to give us a jump start into getting this project done. We have the money now through the mitigation. Mitigation means what can you do? What kind of projects you have that will either lessen severity or stop what happened in August. What we're doing right here, will do both. And of course, we want to spend it as quick as possible, which means go through engineering, go through permitting, and start construction because we have no reason to wait. We have the money to be able to do it. So when you say when all this is going to be started, we're working on it right now to get this the paperwork in for this funding. And GSA already is working on the improvements to the Panama Canal. They already just about finished start construction on the Law Ridge Levee extension. So it's happening now. Internally, we're going to do the improvements on Clouat Ditch and the floodway from the airline to Bay Francois. As soon as we can turn number 7 pump on, we're going to get started on doing internally with our own people, start improving that whole system through there, try to get that water across. So again, I took up a hell of a lot more time than I should have probably, but I wanted everybody to understand that we're working on it. We got some real good ideas, real good information, and we finally got some money to work with. So, yes, Bill.
Sir,
Yeah.
this gravity drain, you never once mentioned it only works when you got a north-northwest wind. there is no fall, you're going uphill. So no matter how much you dig, no matter how clean, no matter how wide, if Lake Pontchartrain drains up 2-3 feet, guess what
Yeah.
happens? It's gonna back up.
It-
It can't flow uphill.
Absolutely right, to a point. Once your elevation, because we've got such a differential in elevation between where we're at right now and Lake Pontchartrain, Blonde River, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Marpaw, is that the wind and tide has a significant effect on the drainage efficiency getting out. It will drain though. The major deal though is two ways of draining it. It's making it slicker, getting it out faster, your channels slick, which in a lot of cases they concrete the lining, stuff like that, getting it out quicker. The other way is actually giving more capacity within the ditch to capture the water, hold it in the ditch and get it out. One of the things we're trying to do is open up the channel so it actually can capture some of that stuff. But having said all of this is all we can do because we can't control the wind and we cannot control the tide. All we can do is what we're doing right now, open it up as much as possible so if we don't have a big of an effect from tide and wind, then it can get out. I mean, that's all. And at least, even under the same conditions, it is getting out faster than it's getting out now.
It
Will be.
can't go faster if the differential is narrow, because the lake goes up. And that's what happens with a hurricane.
Right.
You got southeast winds, and I don't care how wide, how deep. If Lake, my brother lives in E9, I can call him up, he's 14 foot above the water, normal. That's the height of the slab. And, hey brother, where's the water at? Well, it's over my bulkhead.
Right.
It's up 4 steps. If it's up 4 or 5 steps, we're going to have flooding here.
And again, we cannot do anything about that.
No,
We can do everything that we can to benefit under normal situations, which we'll call headwater drainage coming out, and that's what we're gonna spend our money on, right there. Yeah.
So as of right now, there's no plan to help remediate.
Uh,
When y'all turned them pumps on, with great flood, we had the same exact amount of water from the great flood that we did Hurricane Ida.
Right.
But we pumped water longer from Hurricane Ida than we did the great flood.
Right.
All your models, and I can tell you, when you turn them pumps on at Waterboro and all the other pump stations, it comes around there, it's that through it, it backs up onto us. We get back water, we watched it come in for years. I just wonder, do y'all have any plans to protect us? If not, I can leave, I can tell everybody a lot of.
well, there are some other, well, again, when BKI, Bert Kleinpeter, gets up here, if I can get through with my presentation, he is working on something, on a surge protection plan that's paid by Pontchartrain Levee District that is a joint project between St. James Parish and Ascension Parish, which will answer all those questions you're asking right now. It's a much bigger project, much more money than what we're looking at here. There's other way to finance
Got a
it.
survey done, if you build a levee from I-10, come around behind us, go over there to the bayou,
Right.
right there by BFI, come back to 70, shut that big.
And that's-
it stops the flooding.
And that's part of the plan. That's what's being studied right now by Bert Kleinpeter. Well, and I know, I understand that. The problem is, you know, you can't get permission to do something unless you go through planning. After you get all of your information in that they require. If you don't have it, you can't get it. You got a stack of stuff, you got to give them this thick just to start the process. If you don't have all of this, don't even ask, don't even try to get involved. This is federal government stuff.
Okay, so we're not, the questions are gonna come at the end, I understand everybody has questions and comments, but, you know, we looked at everybody, you got 60 people in, everybody with 2 minutes is 2 hours for questions. So, you know, we'll have time at the end, and everybody can meet with Bill or with myself. So, we have some, places you can fill out these questions, we'll address them, but let's, move along to the second, next presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Autry. I'm with the company HNTB. In Ascension Parish, I go by RT as well, so you can call me that. I have with me Melissa Kennedy and Mike Herzig. It's been a rewarding 2.5 years working for the parish on different projects, all specific to improving and enhancing the sustainability of the parish in terms of doing the right analysis with the right data and performing the right modeling work. Today, we are here to showcase our results on the Bayou Conway Panama Canal Basin, and we will work through that. We'll go over the project objectives and the scope. We will also showcase some of the flood improvement summary. Mike is going to open up his model. We don't have enough time to go over and showcase all the modeling analysis. But we will discuss in detail the flood improvement alternatives as well. And then I think we'll pass it on to GSA, who took our recommendations, are in the process of actually implementing the project. So we will be here. It's difficult for a guy like me to tone down the presentation and not make it too technical, but we are keeping it at a high level. However, if any of you have questions, we are all local. We are here. We'll stay around to answer any and all of your questions. So with this, I'm going to pass this mic on to Melissa Kennedy.
Thank you, Autry. Okay, I'm gonna, you can go to the next slide. I'm gonna talk about the project and the model and where we are right now. This right up here is our scope for this project. We started out with collecting a lot of data. We did channel surveys of both the Bayou Conway and Panama Canal. We did surveys of bridge structures. We did some overland survey beyond the channels. We obtained LIDAR data. We also collected some hydrologic data, including rainfall, gauge data, and some surge data. We also collected the existing models that were out there to use as our starting point. So based on that, we took those existing models and all that survey data and expanded the models and updated them, both the hydrologic and hydraulic models. And Mike's going to talk a little bit more about that. We then, utilizing those models, we evaluated a bunch of different alternatives, flood improvement alternatives, to see how they reacted in reducing water surface elevations. We basically evaluated the 100-year event and the 25-year event. And then last of all, we took that information, did some preliminary design analysis, came up with some recommendations, and prepared a report. Next. Okay, this is the overall study area. In the dark outline is Ascension Parish. The highlighted blue is a 100-year floodplain. The green, the lime green, is basically the Bayou Conway Panama Canal Basin. Bayou Conway starts in the Mississippi River, goes up over 10, back around to the east, back under 10, under airline, back under 10, and then extends further east, connects into Blind River. As Mr. Rue said, Panama Canal basically starts just downstream, upstream of the airport and extends to the east and connects back into Bayou Conway at I-10. And this, again, is a man-made channel originally constructed to relieve some of the flooding along Bayou Conway in the first place. In addition, as Mr. Rue said, Bayou Boyle comes in up above a little north of I-10 in the first crossing of Bayou Conway and I-10 and connects into Bayou Conway. Next. What I want to talk about here are the flood improvement alternatives that we looked at. We looked at basically different dredging alternatives, channel improvement alternatives, and improvements at the railroad. The dredging alternatives we looked at consisted of both dredging in Bayou Conway and Panama Canal, dredging in them individually at different lengths. We looked at channel widening, and then we also looked at improvements downstream. As Mr. Rue discussed, that the topography is higher along the river, and as you go downstream, it gets a lot lower. So the concern was, well, let's look at some of those areas downstream, and will those improvements help with the flooding upstream? So we looked at straightening the channel where Mr. Rue talked about there's a bend in the channel. We looked at adding new channels in that location. We looked at widening under the railroad, and we looked at adding a brand new, very large structure under the railroad. So we looked at all those in combination as well with the dredging. So next slide. This slide basically shows again the outline of the drainage basin for Bayou Conway and Panama Canal. In the pink, it's 77 square miles, and as you can see, it does take up a good portion of the parish. What else you're seeing here are two other drainage basins. One is called the Marvin Broad Interior. That is basically the Marvin Broad levee system drainage basin. So that outlined in pink is the drainage area that all goes down to the Marvin Broad pump station. And then to the right of that where it says exterior, that entire area outlined in red is all the area on the exterior of the Marvin Broad levee system that is impacted on the outside of that levee. It consists of partial downstream Amite River basin and also part of Lake Maurepas. And I'm going to hand it over to Mike, who's going to talk a little bit more about the interconnectivity between the basins, kind of a little bit more expansion on what Mr. Rue said.
Thank you, Melissa. So as Melissa was pointing out, this is a really complicated situation. You have a lot of exterior or a lot of these outside hydraulic or water-related issues to deal with. You mentioned Lake Pontchartrain. Lake Maurepas is on the right of the screen. That's an influence during the high surge, high water levels. You have the Amite River, which is on the upper portion, that comes in when that's high. That also affects it. You have the St. James and what flows north from St. James into the swamp area. And then on top of all that, you have the local interior rainfall that flows in the Bayou Conway system. And then you have the connectivity or this flow connection that you guys were talking about between Marvin Broad and Bayou Conway and Panama Canal. So there's a lot of things that you all have to deal with. And so try to manage all that, next slide, is this, we're talking about analysis and studies, but to make the best decision, you need to have, how do you take that all into account? And one way is doing these analyses and these map models. Right here is just a depiction of what's involved and like what we were involved with and what the Ascension Parish had us working on to better inform them in what alternatives to address flood issues within the Bayou Conway system. You have to take into account the cross-section or the channel itself, which is depicted by these green lines, which are just sections along these streams. Then you have to take into account all the structures. You all know how many crossings there are. Those all affect how water flows. So that needs to be sort of taken into account because they wanted a system-wide understanding of what to do. So then you have to take into account these issues of connectivity between Marvin Broad and the Bayou Conway Panama Canal system and what happens when that's high and Bayou Conway is low, where that water's moving. And that last slide indicated two little yellows, which I didn't point out, that represent where those structures are along Brittany Street. And thank you. And then, because this isn't easy enough, you have to deal with the swamp and the surges and the water levels coming in underneath I-10, Airline Highway, the railroad, and what happens to the swamp when those waters rise and how does that affect Bayou Conway and Panama Canal. And that's depicted in our situation. We had to take a snapshot of what to study, and this is what it shows the study area from the Mississippi River and all the way in the headwaters to your left, all the way down into the swamp on the, on the east side of I-10. The hatched area is the swamp that we're taking into account and all the storage that's potentially there when the water levels exceed the banks. So this analysis was done, a study was done, and we looked at all the different alternatives that were discussed. So next slide. But how do you compare all that? So we looked at a bunch of points throughout the area, and these are just highlighting some of the key points that the parish wanted to say, we really want to pay some attention of what's going on in these areas. Pelican Point, Asterland, Brittany Street, down by Airline Highway, and the railroad, and then some like LA 70 and I-10. So let's look at the water levels. Let's look at all the different alternatives. Let's compare that to what's going on right now and what's making the best improvements, because it's all going to cost money. So, next slide. And I just want to sort of highlight, what we're looking at when we're trying to understand what to do. So what's depicted here is you have the light blue, and I apologize, that's showing the existing conditions. So if you look at the Pelican Point area, you can sort of see that little block in the bottom corner. Light blue is existing. That's what's gets flooded now. And this is for the 100-year, and that's, so you have to kind of imagine what does that mean. So so then the red is what's going to happen with the alternatives. And where you don't see a difference, where you see red, that means the red and the blue are over on top of each other. But where you see the blue, that means, okay, we're lowering water levels. So if we do this dredging or the selective dredging along Panama Canal, this is what's going to happen. So what you see is, this is the selective dredging option. What you see is you have a lot of red in the swamp, which is to be expected. Surge comes up, this is the 100-year, comes through these crossings, fills up the swamp. Then you have the local rainfall that's running down all these different Bayou Conway, Panama Canal, all your ditches, from here to Maine, and it eventually gets in the swamp, and it's got nowhere to go. So it starts backing up slowly and slowly. But what we realized is that under this condition, this 100-year event, improvements down by Airline Highway Railroad crossing weren't that effective, because there's already water there. It's got nowhere to go. But if we do selective dredging along the Panama Canal, we actually saw improvements, because there is this elevation difference between the Pelican Point up by the junction of Bayou Conway and Panama Canal and all the way down to the swamp. So we started seeing some benefits, some lowering of water levels in the Pelican Point area, but we also saw some improvements up by the Brittany Street, or actually Bayou Conway, because as you're lowering water levels in Panama Canal, it makes it a little more efficient. As we talk about, water's going out a little bit more faster, and it's relieving some of the water from Bayou Conway. So we take that information, we compare these alternatives, and then we start making okay, let's start making some good decisions about what to do. So next slide. So now I'm going to bring Melissa up just to sort of summarize those results.
So as Michael said, the basic plan, and Mr. Rue said also that the selective dredging within Panama Canal was the option that provided the most benefit, lowering of water surface elevations. And again, we're talking the 100-year event. We looked at the expanded channel dredging as well, and Mr. Rue talked about that. The difficulties with doing a total channel expansion is because, as you've seen, the Panama Canal banks are completely overgrown with trees. They're higher. To expand, you'd have to remove all that. It's a permitting nightmare. Also much more expensive. So although that did offer additional benefit in lowering water surface elevations, it's a much more complicated scenario. So as Mr. Rue said, we're going to do selective dredging along the canal. The other thing that we talked about is the downstream channel improvements and at the railroad crossing. And as Michael said, because we're already in the lowest area and it's already in the swamp area, that is where your storage area is. So if you're going to make improvements there, it's not doing a lot of good because your water surface levels are already very high. So for the 100-year event, we do not recommend those alternatives. So again, the final plan recommended selective dredging within the Panama Canal. And as Bill said, GSA is working on that project now, so I'm turning it over. Okay.
Thank you. So next we have a representative here from the Pontchartrain Levee District. We have Blaine Sheets, he's the chairman of the board, and Dwight Poirier, who's their legal representative. Blaine will take a moment to tell you what Pontchartrain Levee District is doing in our area.
Good evening. My name is Blaine Sheets. I'm vice president of the Pontchartrain Levee District. I'm here mainly to let the public know what we do, how we participate, why we participate, and what in the area. We represent 6 parishes. We represent on the east side of the Mississippi River. We represent East Baton Rouge, Iberville, Ascension, St. James, St. John, the Baptist, and St. Charles. The Pontchartrain Levee District receives the largest share of their revenue from Ascension Parish. In 2015, for example, the Pontchartrain Levee District received $3,330,000 $3,558,000 from Ascension Parish. That represents 30% of the revenue received from the levy district, by the levy district. Approximately two-thirds of the Ascension Parish district employees are from Ascension Parish. We employ a lot of people from this parish. The average cost paid to the employees, commissioners, and retirees total about $2.6 million. Additionally, the time period from 2006 to 2015, over 48 different vendors were used by the Pontchartrain Levy District that are located in Ascension Parish. During the same time period, purchases, service paid to Ascension Parish vendors total over $2.6 million. One of the primary responsibilities of the Pontchartrain Levy District is the maintenance of Mississippi River Main Line Levee. It's 115 miles. It starts at the Baton Rouge Bridge, goes all the way to New Orleans Airport. That's our primary scope. Ascension Parish has approximately 19 miles of that, which comprises about 16% of the total revenue, total millage that the Pontchartrain Levy District is responsible for in the district. The average cost of Ascension Parish maintenance of that 19 miles is $532,000 a year. We have starting from the airport in New Orleans coming this way, we got 10 miles of hurricane that we started trying to build this way to help that surge protection, trying to help. 20 years ago, the board kind of started looking at out the box, trying to see how we can help drainage. So we started some projects in Ascension Parish. We started some in St. James. We started, the whole 6 parishes we trying to work with. The Pontchartrain Levy District is a local sponsor for the West Shore Hurricane Protection Project, which includes an alignment that would reach the Marvin Bro pumping station. It would start in St. Charles, where the hurricane is stopped right now, and trying to bring it all the way through the parishes. The United States Army Corps of Engineers selected a different alternate due to environmental issues, operations, and maintenance costs. As a result, the Corps of Engineers decided to not move West Shore for the Upper Guide Levee to the Bonnet Carey Spillway to the Marvin Bro pump. So they cut kind of St. James out in Ascension on this West Shore. So we got with Ascension and got with St. James, and we started looked at a new alignment, which is the Ascension St. James Storm Surge Protection Project, which Mr. Henry Picard is going to talk about it in a little bit. Mr. Henry is with BKI. He is the lead engineer for both the West Shore and the Ascension St. James project. In regards to the Ascension Parish St. James Storm Surge Protection Project, the Pontchartrain Levy District is paying half of the cost of the study for St. James, and we paid 100% of the cost of Ascension Parish. The study is to determine the feasibility of the levee that would offer protection that the selected West Shore alignment did not. Mr. Picard will explain. Where's Mr. Picard at? No, we're going to go with you first because we're talking about the West Shore. Storm surge.
All right. Thank you. If you could pull up the PDF, and that's going to be the St. John. Thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight. As Mr. Blaine has explained, that we've been working with the West Shore project, and basically what happened was the Corps has certain criteria that they've got to follow. There's a little bit different regulations than the state does. And basically what happened was there was not enough damages in the Corps' methodology of evaluating those. There was not enough damages to equal or offset the construction costs going into St. James and Ascension. So back in 2013, when the Corps basically decided that it was not practical to take it all the way to Marvin Bro, PLD said, look, we committed to St. James. We want to go with the St. John. There we go. There we go. All right, this is the actual alignment that got approved by the Corps, and basically it covers from the upper guide levee of the spillway right here, follows the pipeline corridor all the way around to Mount Airy and ties into the Mississippi River levee. Now, one of the things that they did during the study, the Corps ran the ADCIRC models. It's a super high efficient model that will take and look at storm surges. They ran 151 historical hurricanes, and I believe they ran 8 theoretical hurricanes. And they came up that storm surge from these type of storms would generate in the St. Charles area water elevations that the levee had to be up to elevation 16. Now, as we travel west toward St. John, Ascension, St. James, it reduced because you've got the massive wetlands that it's got to flow through, and you don't have as much wave action. But more specifically for the Ascension area, which would be, in the Sorrento and the Marvin Bro area, in 2020, which was the original design year storm, we needed elevation 8. Now, to give you a reference, Isaac was a 6.3. Water got up to 6.3 at the Marvin Bro pump station. You would have almost another 1.5 feet higher at that point. So in 2020, there's a 100-year protection would be elevation 8. Over a 50-year life, which is mandated by the Corps, due to sea level rise, due to settlement of the basin, just due to subsidence, it's got to go up to elevation 16. And that's basically what we were looking at. So what we did was, this is the St. John portion. If we can move to the St. James. We basically started in about 2014 directly with PLD in St. James. We did a little study for them and looked at some alternatives. We looked at alignments along US 61, alignments along 3125. There's also a spoil bank that was generated when St. James dug most of their canals. And based upon the benefit that we get from pre-consolidated soils, the benefits we get from the spoil material that's been mined, can't use the spoil bank as a levee because it won't meet core criteria, but it's got clay material we can mine out and use. Got to get rid of all the organics, because just like Bill stated, when they dug Bayou Francois and New River Canal, it was just opposite cast. They threw it up, included organics, etc. That'll never pass stability requirements. So we can use the material, but we've just got to reconstruct it in an engineered fashion. So what St. James is looking at is they're looking at utilizing that spoil bank. It gives us a little bit of detention ponding behind the levee, and it allows us to reduce pump station sizes, but it gives us the storm surge protection in that area. If we can go to the Ascension. All right, sure.
The West Shore project, it runs along 3125 right there and stops. It don't come to Ascension at all. Now, the storm surge we're doing, the red line, it's going to run to 70, and then it's coming down 70 to tie in the Marvin Grove. That's what we're trying to do.
That is correct. What the Corps provided was about $50 million in the West Shore project, but all that's going to do is provide flap gates. Anything north of 3125 is potentially flooded, and that only provides up to a certain level. Okay.
I'm not an engineer. On this 3125, they're putting flap gates. Well, at the last storm they had, this is the Corps design. Water went over 3125.
And the other problem is there's no drainage pumps with the Corps plan, so anything that gets trapped behind the flap gates gets wet too, because if you can't get out, it's just going to hold it in. All right. Now, if we can go to the Ascension part, which was the part y'all are really and truly interested in. basically what we're looking at, and this is a concept plan, this is part of what our study was looking at, but we're trying to utilize the existing levees that exist. You've got an existing levee along Bayou Francois. Now, once again, that levee exists. It doesn't meet core criteria, but it does exist. It does provide some protection. We've also got some existing levee around the Sorrento pump station. Once again, doesn't meet core criteria, but it is a levee that will work on a local basis. Remember, we will be building all this to core criteria, but it won't be funded by the Corps. So we have to do it in stages. We won't have the big pots of money that are coming. So what we're trying to do is stage it so that it gets built over a period of time and so forth. So what we have is we have a section that we've got to complete basically from Bayou Francois down to Highway 61 and then over to the ridge levee that Bill talked about that bounds around the Sorrento area. We would then continue through the Sorrento portion, get over, and then come crossing Bayou Conway, and then coming south, crossing I-10, coming down to the landfill. Now, one of the things we're looking at is this is all meant for combination of storm protection, but with storm protection, we've got to provide for that rainfall event that comes with every hurricane that we know we all get. We've got a pump station located on Panama Canal. From the models we ran, 2/3 of the flow goes down Panama Canal, about 1/3 of it goes down Bayou Conway. Now, in order to economize, we looked at it, and it's cost effective to build a larger pump station on Panama Canal and connect a new canal that connects both Conway and Panama, so that when we close the gates, we can pump it all out Panama under a normal rainfall event. When we don't have a high tide, it goes out Panama, it goes out Bayou Conway under gravity flow. This is the same system that's being used on Marvin Bro Station. We don't pump every rain event. We only pump rain events that have high storm, high tides. So, and then we basically come down south of the landfill and tie into Highway 70 on a temporary basis. Now, over the 50-year life, we're looking at the same concept here. Over the 50-year life, we would have to build a little bit more substantial levee. We've got to go from the elevation 8 at 2020 to an elevation 16 in 2070. The pumping station would be the green square. Right, look, I'm running out of line, okay. But the green square right at the, on Panama Canal, right by the landfill. And then the sort of a green line behind, the red line is the pump, the levee itself, and then we've got a canal behind it. It's all schematic, it's not exactly sized just yet. This would be proposed. No, this is proposed. None of this is, the only thing that's there is the levee along Bayou Francois, which is labeled existing levee, and then the levees around the Sorrento pump station, which is an existing levee. But this would basically close off the gap that covers the entire Panama Conway Basin. Right now, Marvin Bro's got a protection. With the West Shore, St. John is going to get their protection. So the only place that's left open is both St. James and the lower portion of Ascension. And between the St. James Storm Surge Project and the Ascension Storm Surge Project, it closes that gap, and you guys get the protection that y'all were asking about earlier in the meeting.
Excuse me, sir, can you say that again, where that proposed pump station is going to be?
It's a conceptual location, but it's down on Panama Canal in the area of the landfill.
Why put it there instead of the confluence of Conway and Sorrento out? I think that's where it's going.
Well, if you put it out at the confluence of Panama Canal and Conway, you're out in the marsh, and that's a low area. The other thing is, one of the things we've got to be careful with is the Corps is very adamant about encapsulating wetlands. We want to minimize that. If you put the pump station out there or the levee out there, we would be encapsulating too much wetlands. We'd have an environmental fight. Look, we've got to work this from a reality standpoint. Sure, we could run the levee along the interstate, and we could have been fought by the environmental groups for decades, where the Corps said, we're not going to fight them, we'll do it along the pipeline levee. So, I mean, we're trying to get this done so that it can be done practically. It's going to take time, it's going to take money. PLD, Ascension, St. James are all working together so that no one group gets ahead of the other and causes flooding in the other reaches. So it's a regional project, which is something that the state appreciates as far as looking at flood protection like this.
So what's the time frame of that Hoping to have a meeting where we can talk about what good this will be?
We are trying to wrap up the study we're doing right now in the next couple of months, and then we could present it to both PLD and Ascension, and then maybe at that point they can, do a public meeting on that type of stuff. But this is the general concept of what we've been looking at.
Can I say one thing? When I put up the list of funding from this litigation, the $40 million or so, what's not on there is the fourth project. And what we're doing is we are also going for a major competitive bid nationwide to pay for the number one priority, which is the upgrade of our levee system, Bro levee system, upgrade it to prevent any overtopping. If we get this national award for that, then this project right here, at least our portion of this project, is included in that mitigation money of the $43 million. So instead of that $20 or $22 million going for the upgrade of levee, another funding source will pay for that, and then it will be included for this $43 million to do our portion of this project. So that's the way we're trying to get the money for that project.
There's a few more things we've done as far as levee board, just letting y'all know. The Amite River tributary system has been involved. We've been involved in the Frog Bayou, Alligator Bayou drainage plan with both Iberville and Ascension. We are also currently working with Ascension Gravity Drainage District on possible alternatives to drain the basin of Fish Bayou, trying to help that area over there. The levee district is also project sponsor, an applicant for the Law Ridge levee extension. The extension that he's talking about starts at the end of Gold Place Road, heading toward Wall Cemetery Road, trying to put that finish that levee system in. To date, the levee board has paid 100% of the cost of the Law Ridge levee project in terms of engineering, permitting efforts, and is currently in the process of right-of-way acquisition and satisfaction of mediation. Do the cheat sheets. Pending the assurance of the final permit. Further, we have submitted to the Amite River Basin Commission and the Parish of Ascension, as well as other interested agencies, the plans and specific permit application for rehabilitation of the Amite River Diversion Canal Weir. The Pontchartrain Levee District has contacted in an effort to assist the Amite River Basin Commission in moving the project forward to assist not only in ecosystem enhancement, but drainage and enhancement as well. Finally, the most important for tonight's meeting, the Pontchartrain Levee District hired Glenn Shine and Associates several years ago to study the Panama Canal Bayou Conway waterway. We are currently working with the Ascension Parish Gravity Drainage District again, and their consultant engineer to enhance the drainage system associated with the region. Mr. Shaheen, let you present your plan. You up.
Thank you, sir. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for being patient. I'm Glenn Shaheen, and I've got Miss Kimberly Cole with me tonight. She's an engineer in her office as well. As you've heard, there's a lot going on in this Panama Conway Basin. A lot of it been going on for years. Probably this Panama Conway issue began probably back in 2008 or 9, and it's come forward to this point to where there's actually some real benefit that maybe the basin can realize with some of these projects. As Blaine Sheets just explained to you, we're working for the Pontchartrain Levee District, and the Pontchartrain Levee District has a memorandum of understanding with Ascension Parish and East Ascension Gravity Drainage District to work on specific projects within the parish. Of course, they work on projects within their entire jurisdictional area, which is 5 or 6 parishes, as Blaine just explained to you. The project that I'm going to talk to you about is up on the screen. It's the actual, it's the improvements to a 4.5-mile section of the Panama Canal. And our responsibility on that project through our contract with Pontchartrain Levee District is for the design, the permitting, the construction administration for this project. As I said, it's a 4.5 mile, approximately 4.5 miles. It begins at the east side of the Louisiana Regional Airport, where recently they installed, maybe a couple years ago, they installed 3 10-by-10 concrete boxes, which allowed them to expand the runway and the taxiway for the airport. Our project will pick up at the end of those 10-by-10 boxes, and it will extend in an easterly direction over to Louisiana Highway 70. It will end at the bridge at Louisiana Highway 70. The project was determined as a result of the modeling that was done by Ascension Parish's consultant, where they modeled various alternatives and determined that this was the most cost-effective way of lowering and realizing the biggest benefit with the lowest cost on the Bayou Panama, in the Bayou Panama Basin. The proposed improvements will consist of channel clearing and dredging, clearing and snagging. There'll also be some clearing along the top bank, and it'll probably be located on one side, on one bank. We're not quite sure what the limits of that clearing will be. That'll all be determined during the construction design of the project. There'll be channel modifications to improve the channel capacity and water conveyance. There's I guess a sketch on the screen right now. The existing channel will be widened and deepened, and the bottom width of the channel is being proposed at somewhere between 25 to 30 feet. The side slopes are going to be 1.5 to 1, 1.5 horizontal, 1 vertical. That's what we expect them to be. And well, it varies. It varies, and we're not showing a depth because one of the things it doesn't show is that there are actually some spoiled banks on each side, and most of the locations. There's some locations where there is no spoiled bank on one side, on one bank. So we're not quite sure exactly how that's going to look at this point. We're not quite sure whether that slope will be the actual slope once we design it. So those are all issues that will be determined in the design of the project. We also expect that there may be some structure modifications, such as culverts. Maybe there's some adjustments of elevations and sizing of culverts. There may be some armoring, rip-wrap placement, and various other improvements at various structures that may be a part of this project as well. Those will be determined in the design phase of the project. The project limits, I think most of you are familiar with Panama. They're fairly tight, and we expect that most of the area, or a lot of the area along the Panama Canal channel will probably be wetlands. So we're currently investigating. In fact, we met with the contractor yesterday to look at what we think are the cost-effective construction considerations we want to make with this project. Someone mentioned earlier about the design, the permitting, and construction. The permitting and rights-of-way acquisition, if there's any on this project, are typically the things that will drag a project out, and they will typically add expensive cost to the project. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that whatever we're proposing in terms of improvements, that those improvements are cost-effective, but they're also taking into consideration the environmental and the right-of-way issues that you may have to deal with on a project like this. The parish did provide us some information. It's information that we have used to date in developing the scope of our project in our work with Pontchartrain Levee District. However, in order for us to complete our work, we're going to need some additional survey data, and that survey data will be to identify and locate any existing utilities, pipelines, and also evaluate some of the structure details that we may have to contend with in the design aspects of the project. We'll also need some geotechnical information. We're looking at side slopes of 1.5 to 1. We think that those are, doable. However, we want to determine the slope stability on those side slopes. We don't want to build levees or build a channel with side slopes that may not be stable enough to be able to withstand the constant wetting and drying. We don't want those banks to slough and eventually have some of the same problems that we're dealing with today. And also, we want some of that information for whatever structural evaluations we need to make on some of the structures. Also, as I said, that there's probably substantial wetlands in most of the project route, and we expect that we'll do wetland determinations, and those determinations will go into the evaluation of whatever options and alternatives we want to consider in the project. We don't want to labor this project with a bunch of environmental issues that make it impossible or cost prohibitive to actually undertake. And the last component that we're looking at, there will be some servitude acquisitions. We fully expect that. We will probably need areas for accessing the site. We'll probably need areas for staging areas for materials and equipment and construction activities. And we may need some areas for material storage. So all of those components will go into the effort. We're still currently evaluating all that. We hope to be able to go back to the Pontchartrain Levee District in August and actually present to them a task order for them to approve. We've had a contract on the Panama Conway project since probably 2008, and it's been on and off again, and I think now there's enough traction and there's enough interest in the project, I think, to move it forward. Schedule. Figured somebody asked about schedule earlier. Well, our responsibilities are the design, permitting, any servitude acquisition, and environmental issues we may have to contend with. We expect that will probably take somewhere around 12 months or 1 year. There would probably have to be, if the project turns out it's a cost-effective project and moving forward, there'd be a public bidding process that would probably take 2 months, and then the construction, depending on the construction methodology, could take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. We won't know that until we actually do a design and actually come back to you and say, this is the actual cost, and here's what we estimate the construction schedule and timing to be. Based on the information in the report that was prepared by Ascension Parish, they have estimated the preliminary cost to be $2.16 million. That's the extent of my report update to you. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I guess I'll turn it back over to Blaine or Bill.
We just here for the PLD just to let you know that we are involved and we want to be involved with Ascension Parish. Y'all do a lot for the PLD system, and let you know that I appreciate y'all showing up and being concerned, because so many are not concerned. So it's pretty impressive to see the people here. So.
Thank you, Blaine. I want to take a minute and, we had a couple of people walk in, newly elected Senator Ed Price, raise your hand there, I think everybody knows you, but as a part of his area, and my fellow councilman Travis Turner, who represents the northern part of Panama Conway. If you will, if you have some questions on those sheets, pass those to the middle if you don't mind. And I'd like to ask, I have one other person to come up, Kent Shakesnyder. You know, he had this position before I had it. So Kent has a couple of comments, and then we'll start addressing the questions. I'll pick up the questionnaires.
Thank you. I'm glad people are here, and I disagree with some people. I think people will stay till midnight if we can get some true answers on everything and see what we can do to move forward. So time is not a problem with the people that are impacted. I'll give you an example. I'm going to give you the good, bad, and ugly, because I've been right in the middle of it. And in 2008, they commissioned a study. 2009, it came out. We were told it was a study for the Panama, improvements of Panama Conway system. I was all excited. Had a big old book with this thick, all the information, and kept waiting, kept pushing, kept waiting. After a number of years, as we pushed it publicly in the meetings, then we found out that there wasn't enough information in that study to move forward. We also got a report from the Corps that they said the information given in that study basically wasn't worth it. Kill the beans. And we spent $550,000 on that study. We've been expecting to get permits for Laurel Ridge Levee for a number of years. It looks like it's going to finally happen, thank goodness. But permitting and everything is very optimistic if they're going to say it's going to take a year. We are giving reports here to try to open up the Kluwa ditch and all that area to get that water across the airline highway in those areas, and it just astounds me that we are not trying to do something to put a 2 or 3 foot berm along Brittany Street, along Conway, to keep the water from getting there in the first place. They got about over a mile that the water comes over the side and goes into that area. And then we want it to go under the trestle. We want to open up things going into the trestle. Let's not have it go in there in the first place. That was what the Follett plan had. The Sorrento pumping station, the system, was supposed to be an enclosed system and pump it out. Was never completed because of various reasons. At the time, some local people did not want to do the things that were scheduled by the Follett plan through their property. So understand that just wasn't completed as designed. But we do know what to do. You can continue the levee that's right there by the college right now and continue it on up Brittany all the way up to Brittany Tower Road, and that water won't go across. And you can put some flap gates to have the normal drainage, and then it wouldn't get into the Bates subdivision, and we wouldn't have to worry about getting it across Airline Highway and going to Marvin Brook. But that's not given as an offer. I do question HNTB, the reason for this study here, and the conditions that nothing would happen if you improved the railroad crossing. I asked this question: what was the condition given for the headwater that's on the other side, or the level of the water that's reached at the Airline Highway? 5.2. All right, at 5.2. The water doesn't get to 5.2 unless you have an Isaac. The normal situations that we have, that we get flooding and fighting and sandbagging all the time, the normal situation is what? Okay, elevation 3 is what's normal. Okay, what happens then? Okay, and my other question, and please, no disrespect. We appreciate anything that's being done. We appreciate everybody here because it's a very hard thing, believe me. It's unbelievably hard to get a project done properly. Did all of y'all ride that on a boat and go through that area and see that area? And the Panama Conway, did you ride the whole system in a boat and see? You need to do it. And if you ride in that boat and you can't get through that crossing, like we did a number of times, you're going to see and you're going to change your opinion about what it is. And when you get across the airline highway and you got to take a 90-degree angle, the water does, and take another 90-degree angle, and you can almost walk across the main drainage on the other side because it's filled in, it's completely filled in. You will see and you will find out why all the other people here feel so upset about these things that are coming up when you're looking at it with your own eyes. And ask Troy. He saw it yesterday. And we've seen it years ago when we made trip after trip to try to get people to understand. But if you look at on this right here, you don't see that. And the people didn't know that we were working on a 5-foot level, which by the time any water gets there, it's going to be at 5 foot. So no, it's not going to be a difference. So that's why the study is like that. And so I'm glad they're doing something. My only question is going to be, we're putting more water faster from an 8.6 level at Pelican Point, and it goes into Bayou Conway, and Bayou Conway is about 4.6. We're getting more water there faster. How is the water going to get out of Bayou Conway when we're putting more water at that point that we're not improving? That's a big question. And it's going to be there. It's going to push it back. I can tell you what it's going to do. It's going to push it back, and it's going to come down Brittany Street, and it's going to go back across there, and it can't cross the airline highway because you can't open up a mile of the airline highway to get across like it's coming over. That's where it is. And when you turn the Marvin Road pump station on, and it comes through and it comes back around, it goes all the way back around in the swamp, and it comes up over there by where Grady has his station is, between the airline highway and the Sorrento levee, and it goes back up into Sorrento there. And we don't have, we need to put something there. It's very simple. These are things that can be done. But, and I'd venture to say it's a very short berm that needs to be put to protect the people around Tuyay. But a 2 or 3 foot berm on Brittany Street would stop the water from going across, and we wouldn't have to do all the things we need to do. That's going to take all kind of permitting to get on the other side. I think that would be a better permit. So there's a number of other things. I appreciate everybody. Everybody's been trying to do some things. It's coming to an agreement to do it, but there's some things that we need to look at as to why we're coming up with these final things and this improvement. So I just would suggest before you go any further, try to make a boat trip. If you don't have one, we'll get one for you and we'll bring you over there. And I think you would see something different.
So, what I'd like to request is that we set up some type of workshop to where we can have some time with people like Kent, Troy, and other people in this room that have that direct experience, and let them have more time to have a conversation directly with you guys, and you guys look at those proposals, and so block out 4 or 5 hours or whatever it takes. We're not gonna solve that tonight, and I understand your model is like it is, but I would like to ask that they be provided with an opportunity to provide the input. We're going to move on to some questions that we have, which, so I think we'd answered this. Maybe you weren't here earlier, but Bill, if you will, the first question is about what's the status of the preliminary design of the pump to the river solution that was promised 2 or 3 years ago. We recognize that there's a significant cost associated for this solution, but at least it is a solution. Currently, we've seemed to have exhausted the gravity flow options and therefore need a real solution.
Yeah, and look, all I can say is that, and I tried to show it on the LiDAR map, you know, it just won't work because you're going from a low elevation trying to pump it uphill and a massive hill to the river itself. So basically, again, if you're going uphill, how can you make it flow that way? Well, you're going to have to dig a... No, listen a minute. You've got to put a sump for the water, so the water can go to that sump. Then you pump out that sump. And that's the only way. Now, we did the evaluation before, and the bottom line is, at the river itself, you would have to have a reservoir 20 or 30 foot deep just to get the water there. But then you have to pump it over the levee and try to get it out. The massive amount of pumps that would be needed to get it there and pump it over is just not feasible. And again, we'll be glad to do it if somebody can give us $1 billion, okay? But again, we've got to work within the funding that we can get.
The issue was, it was approved to do the study and come up with a plan. It cost $1 billion. Okay, it's not feasible. But what happened to that? Tommy Arnett was in the meeting and said, yeah, we've got the money to do the study and come up with a find a strategic location for a pumping station, do the estimate, and at least it's a solution in your back pocket. When all this other stuff is going to fail, when you still depend on gravity and we get the south wind.
So I'd like to ask that, Bill, if you will, if you have the study that was done on Manchac, then if you get that to me, and I'll get this back out either through something on a web page or directly to Mr. Patrizzi. But if we have a study that's done and it shows what the cost, let's disseminate that back out. Lynn, I have more water coming and may need more pumps, bigger pumps and ditches, and I think this is regarding Sorrento. You have more, I think you talked about that some, but maybe just take a minute of, you know, we're seeing what they're seeing in Sorrento is they're seeing improvements to the culverts across Main Street, across John LeBlanc, and they're seeing the water coming. Apparently, you're thinking the water's going to come quicker, which it should, and get into the basin and the pump stations quicker. Are we going to look at the capacity of the pumps, or have we done that?
No, and I mentioned it earlier. Part of the project that we'll be doing is expanding the reservoir itself, making it bigger so it can store more water. And at the same time, expand the pumping capacity, upgrade the pumps that's there, and maybe even add, in fact, have to add more pumps to that station. So if you get, under normal events, you'll never use it. But if you get a catastrophic event, something like not, you know, hopefully it'll never have the August flood, but several times in the last couple of years, we had, in fact, I believe 2 years, 2 years ago, we had it rain in this area for, I believe about 15 inches in about 6 hours. Catastrophic. The reason that happened is because we had a front that came through. It's a vertical front, came through from the Gulf, filled up the basin below us in St. James, and then start coming on us, filled it up here. Well, it was already full there. Our water couldn't get down. Major flash flood over here, and that's when everything stacked up and flooded everybody. Well, we got to get it to the river. I mean, it's not that easy. But, so one of the things is to expand the capacity to hold that water. And what we're basically looking at is an area-wide detention, much bigger than just the town of Sorrento, going up Brittany Street, up toward the upper end of Brittany Street, to try to let that water, if it overflows, gets over there, instead of that water flooding you, we're going to channel it to this open channel reservoir and then pump it across and try to get it out that way.
But the next one was how does all this help Sorrento? I think you've tried to go through that on the last couple of questions. Well, I think both of you have a good question, is what are the effects of the development on the lower end of this? And what's the effect of the dredging on the upper end of Conway? And that's something I hope that we can address in a future meeting or in a workshop. The next question is, it stated that new development major cause of flooding, and how's the parish allowing more development in the area while flooding is already occurring, and a new development will clearly make this worse. So that's something that's directly in our boat, parish council. What you've seen is that over the last year or so, there's not been that many developments approved in this area. There have been, and I went through. If you look at the Facebook page that we had set up for this, that there's a listing, and there are 2,500 lots that are future development in the area. These things were approved, some of them 10 years ago, some of them 15 years ago, some of them 3 years ago, some of them 2 years ago. But, we as the parish, we're looking at floodplain management. We actually have, charged the drainage department with going and getting an engineering agency to look at what's recommended on floodplain management. What can we do that can prevent the flooding within the floodplain or control the development within the floodplain? Can we put, what's the alternatives? Can you put the houses up on pillars, stilts, and this type of thing rather than going with fill? And that's something that will be addressed by the council.
What does 2,500 new properties bring in on tax revenue that could be used to improve this?
Well, if you look at just the impact fee, then that's about $2,000 a piece on the impact fee. Now, as far as property taxes, probably looking at, my guess is in the range of $3,000 a year of property taxes per household, depending on so you'd have to do I think the other thing too, and I'm not defending the development, but as I said, some of these things were approved a good while ago. Also, what you have is, let's talk, you can talk about Riverton. So that's one of them that has, it's 780, I don't remember, it's either 780, one of them 780 and one of them's around 900, but that's over about a 10-year period. Now that doesn't help us in the sense that it's still going to be raining and water's still going to be coming down here 10 years from now. However, what we need to do as far as the parish is, we need to address that, what our regulations are for building in this floodplain. And I think that's something that
780 and 900 more people pissed off when they build a home and they can't get out.
No, I agree with you. Next question, is it true that the Corps of Engineers will not give permits to dredge to the parish, and that is why no dredging has been done on the Cluot ditch, Conway Bayou, and that's why zero dredging has been done at the back of, and I won't, this is on near the Cluot ditch, let's say that. So.
Yeah, we are or have had some issues with getting a permit for that floodway that goes across the pipeline from Airline to Bay Francois. It's an ongoing process. Part of the reason is because we didn't have enough information going to the Corps to show the benefit cost of it. And we get into these studies. Nobody hates studies more than I do, because I have to handle the stuff. I've got to be going and answering the questions and going to the Corps every day. The fact of the matter is, if you don't have all of this stuff that these engineers is trying to produce, the Corps don't even accept the application, period. Don't even ask. The first thing they say, give me the feasibility, the cost-benefit ratio on that project. To get the cost-benefit ratio, you got to have all of this information. Engineering, not my opinion, not Mr. Shakespeare's opinion, not anybody else's opinion. It's got to be solid engineering data given to them this thick for them to go through and say the cost-benefit is there, okay. If you do all this other stuff, you'll get the permit. But if you don't have that, you can't even start. You can't even place an application on their desk.
They need a
So,
cost benefit even if they're not coming up with the money.
yes, for the permit.
Does the parish have any property that it can litigate with?
We just bought a piece that we're starting to, we're gonna use as a mitigation bank. Hopefully, we're gonna start getting more properties, in the southern part of the parish to use as mitigation banks. But the purchasing of the mitigation units is not the big issue. Going through the whole process, bureaucracy that has developed with the Corps of Engineers and the federal government is our problem. It takes years sometime for them to review this, and they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Before you know it, 2 years passes, and you really haven't gained a whole lot, okay? Not to mention, you gotta go to the state now too because of the coastal zone. So now we gotta get 2 permits, one from the state, one from the Corps. They don't talk to each other, and they're playing ping pong back and forth, and we got stuck in the middle. So,
Okay, can I summarize that by saying that Ascension Parish, there's no prohibition against giving a permit to Ascension Parish. It's just that we have to go through the process. The last question, and they really just 3 bullets here, which is Kluat Canal, the railroad trestle, and permitting and cleaning out all 3 slots. I'm not sure about that. But, you know, would like for you to talk about the railroad trestle. I think that we mentioned that a little bit and talk about where Conway crosses goes under the railroad, and are there plans there?
yes, and again, I'm going back to the bullet points that I gave before, funding that we're going after as far as this mitigation money. And referencing back to that, you remember, the part of the Conway improvement, Conway Panama Basin improvement is way more than the 2.1, 2.2 million that Mr. Shaheen was talking about for us, this initial dredging phases. It includes all of these benefits we're looking at. The Conway, more dredging in Conway. Also in it is improvements to the railroad trestle and airline highway at the other end. It's in the project. It's not in the first phase. First phase is dredging. After that, though, it's in that project because we're looking at about, I believe, $15 million. And that's improving pumps, improving the channels, improving the connection between Kluat and Francois, improvement at train trestle, improvement at the US 61. All of that is included in that funding.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing I have is, I think Mr. Shake Snyder, Councilman Shake Snyder, and Mr. Debate, you know, they have some ideas they'd like to present to you for consideration, and maybe we can use that as part of this workshop. Hopefully, we'll set that up and have an opportunity for Mr. Debate and the other residents around here that have experienced the flooding problem, that they can have an input in and listen to the answers and questions associated with how the model operates and how it needs to operate. So, but I want to thank all of you for coming out. I want to also tell you that, you know, hopefully we'll have this a couple of times a year, and we'll be able to update you on the progress the next time.